Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, March 1st, into March, start of the LA Galaxy's preseason camp. Voluntary reporting today. I can tell you that voluntarily it looks like most of the LA Galaxy were at camp today. We're going to talk a whole bunch about that camp. We're going to talk about Greg Vanney. We're going to talk about the media call that we had with Greg Vanney and some other players as well. And we have an actual rumor, a one ready to rock and to go. Should be expecting some signings here shortly. So we got a bunch to talk about. In order to help me do all that is Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kev, how you doing, buddy? You hanging in there?
Hey, I want to talk about the meaning of the word voluntary in a minute. But first, did you know, this is news, you might have heard this yesterday, Bob Bradley and Greg Vanney are not the coaches, soccer coaches in LA who have won trophies this year.
Oh, really? And which soccer coach would that be?
Ted Lasso won a trophy last night.
Ted Lasso, the man, the philosopher. I read your article in the LA Times, and having known you and knowing your affinity for Ted Lasso and then your affinity for two particular jokes, I was proud to see you got both of those jokes into your story. Yeah.
And Ted Lasso called Bob Bradley and Greg Vanney today to commiserate and say, be a goldfish.
Be a goldfish, that's right.
Short memory.
Yeah, that was fun.
Memory.
That's one of those things we have looked at in this household. We've now watched it 2 times through. I think we're getting ready for 3 before they're, as they're recording and doing season number 2. So I have my, I know it's hard to see, and for those of you just listening on the podcast, I have my Diamond Dog shirt on as well to celebrate Ted Lasso's win. So, all good stuff there, and I'm glad that there's going to be another season because my wife, surprisingly, is probably one of the bigger fans of Ted Lasso and can't wait for it to come back on. And she generally wants nothing to do with soccer most of the time because, I kind of overload her with that. Can you imagine me overloading somebody with soccer talk?
Well, that show has nothing to do with soccer anyways. It's a life. He's a life coach. He's not a soccer coach.
Yes. Yeah, you're not wrong. So, all right, let's get to some LA Galaxy news. And there was a lot of it, which thank the heavens that be, because Kevin, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of talking about things that like we had 2 things to talk about and I needed to make it into an hour-long show. I'm glad that's not the case. We have multiple things to talk about today. The first thing that I want to sort of get through is the jersey launch, and I want to clean up just the final little things on the jersey launch. I talked with the LA Galaxy again about the Araujo kit number. I know we talked about it on Thursday, but I'm going to reiterate it again. For those of you who ordered from the Team LA store, no Araujo kits with the number 22 were printed at all by the store. The Galaxy told me this. So all the Araujo kits coming out of the Team LA store shipping will have the number 2 on them. If you ordered from MLSstore.com, that was where we were getting messages from people who worked at MLSstore.com. They were sort of coming back and saying, you guys, we need, it's basically like if you ordered it as the 22, it was going to ship as the 22. The LA Galaxy tell me that those should be fixed, that you shouldn't have that problem anymore, and that basically the LA Galaxy will go ahead and you should get the number 2 from Araujo, even from the MLS store. That one I think is still a little bit on shaky ground, just because of the fact, Kevin, it comes from a giant warehouse, and not necessarily something the LA Galaxy can control. This is more like league control, and
I mean, you might want the 22 Araujo throwback.
Yeah,
that's a new jersey.
That's right. It's
one new throwback jersey.
It's one of those weird like kit misprint things that end up being worth a lot of money or something like that.
Yeah,
so
collector's item.
Yeah, exactly. So
like I got a Sacramento Republic scarf.
Yeah. Oh,
and it says MLS 2022.
Yeah, and now you're like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a fun one. Let's talk about that real quick, just because it's sort of a throwaway news nugget we were going to add in there, and it was going to be down at the bottom. It was going to be nothing, but if you've been following Sacramento Republic, and it does have an LA Galaxy link, which is why we've been talking about that. But basically, their chief financial backer, the guy who was going to spend all the money and back their bid into Major League Soccer, decided to pack up his stuff and go home. He took all his money with him whenever he did that as well, and so Sacramento Republic's bid now to enter Major League Soccer is kind of in a holding pattern, and it's worse than just in a holding pattern. Unless they find another rich guy with rich woman, I don't want to discriminate. They need a rich person, Kevin, with a whole bag of money to come in and give them a whole bag of money, and that whole bag of money will then allow the Sacramento Republic to continue their expansion process with Major League Soccer.
So when are you stepping up? When are you gonna write that check?
Yeah, Yep. That's
the guy you're talking about. By the way, you can mention his name, Ronald Burkle. He's a Pomona-born businessman. My understanding is he never even paid the MLS expansion fee, which is pretty unusual because MLS loves to tout that. As soon as they reach agreement with an expansion city, they talk about, it's a $200 million expansion fee, or in say in LAFC's case, $125 million. They talk about that money. That check was never written. I mean, they were talking about trying to build a stadium. They were talking about they had team colors, all these things. They never paid the expansion fee. So Ronald Burkle walked away. He didn't need to. I don't think he needs to get any money back. I think he walks away free and clear. And they have potential stadium deals on the table. They have the mayor of Sacramento jumped through a lot of hoops to sort of make this happen. And MLS said they are not walking away from Sacramento, but they did intimate that the process is starting over again, which means other cities can jump in there.
It's just such an interesting part. The LA Galaxy tie to this, of course, is that the general manager for Sacramento Republic was Todd Donovan, former LA Galaxy defender. He has now been promoted to president of Sacramento Republic after the current president stepped down today. So Todd Donovan named president of Sacramento Republic. That's really interesting because I have to imagine on a whole short list of people who might be considered, Kevin, in the future as a prospect for an LA Galaxy front office position, that Todd Donovan and what he has done both when he was with the club, the LA Galaxy, and now what he's done sort of away from the LA Galaxy with being in the front office and having the smarts for that, is probably high on that short list should a position open up of, a president or an acting vice president or something like that, some way to get him into the front office. Todd Donovan, I guarantee you, is at the top of that short list.
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, Chris Klein played for the Galaxy. Now he's the team president. Pete Vagenas was the GM, played for the Galaxy. Greg Vanney coming back, played for the Galaxy. Todd Donovan fits that. He played for the Galaxy, won MLS Cups with the Galaxy, has a Stanford economics degree, business degree. He certainly ticks all those boxes. Would be a guy that would come back, would understand the history, understands the dollars and cents, knows how to balance a checkbook, all those things the Galaxy need. By the way, one thing about Sacramento, too, it's just not the MLS team. There was an NWSL team that was supposed to expand or open play in Sacramento. I'm not sure whether that team was 2022 with the men's team or 2023, but there was supposed to be a women's team as well. So we don't know what the situation is with the NWSL team as well.
Yeah, it throws a lot of things up into question. But anyway, wanted to say congratulations to Todd Donovan. He's a friend of the show and just a really smart guy. So, like I said, keep an eye. If this is a chessboard, look 3 or 4 moves ahead. And I think you could see Todd Donovan one day being in the LA Galaxy front office. It makes a lot of sense. So, having said that, back to a little bit of the kit news. The LA Galaxy and MLS sort of provided a little bit of context into how successful the LA Galaxy's community kit launch was. I was able to get some information. Remember, this is MLS. Remember, it's the Galaxy. Remember that it necessarily isn't always 100% transparent. Or it's more opaque than anything else. But anyway, the LA,
yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Speaking of kits, the Bear has a different kit.
Yeah,
The Bear is
that's actually a Cosmo jersey. Whenever Cosmo came to the COG studio, he actually signed a jersey for the COG staff there, and so that is a Cosmito. Actually, that one's Cosmito jersey there. So the Bear is wearing a Cosmo jersey, which you could run circles around your head trying to figure out that lineage and how that works. But yeah.
So you've gone from the COG studio to the COG bedroom, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say that, and I don't know if I've said this out loud to people, but I think that the probability of me ever going back to the COG studio, at least with having a young kid right now, is probably pretty minimal. My wife is pretty strong stance on that right now. So the goal is eventually to have a home studio set up. So over the next year or so, hopefully we can get something like that set up. And, I'm all for building a set in the garage and doing it like that. I mean, let's go cable access, local TV cable access show. I'm all about that Wayne's World. Basically we could pull that off.
We'll go back to the studio because I could, if I could get Ted Lasso to call your wife and ask her to let you go back to the studio. If Ted Lasso did that, do you think she'd let you go?
No.
Would you want to go? Okay.
She would be very excited to talk to Ted Lasso, for sure. But I don't think that would sway her in her convictions on that. She would just think it was really cool she got to talk to Ted Lasso. So I'm all for, by the way, Ted Lasso wants to call into the show. He's more than welcome to do that. You know that. Somebody said, hey, how can I get that Richmond FC jersey or the AFC Richmond jersey? And I said, well, I thought I did a pretty good job. I do have the LA Times soccer reporter on my podcast. If that doesn't get me an AFC Richmond jersey, I don't know what does. But you didn't even get sent one.
I didn't get one. Yeah, everyone read the story this morning, and I got a bunch of comments. Oh, you got the swag bag from Apple Plus. I did not.
Yes.
My wife bought me AFC Richmond gear for Valentine's Day. That's the kind of wife I have.
Yes.
Mrs. Panda went out and dropped some serious coin on some AFC Richmond stuff for Valentine's Day, which is also sad because that's what she thinks is a Valentine's Day present. So it's good and it's bad at the same time. But yeah, no, I apparently that is for social influencers only, and I am not a social. I influence things the wrong way, but I am working on getting somebody from the show on the pod. I was told that they know we want somebody, and right now they're a little busy taping shows.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, I don't. You know what? The last thing I want to do is interrupt them taping shows. That I need those shows, so the sooner those can get here, that's better. So that's fine. The Galaxy said basically, and this is also from MLS as well about the jerseys. The Galaxy said that this is the second biggest selling jersey launch, defined basically as the first 48 hours of any MLS team over the last 2 years, including expansion teams. MLS has not released who that number one team is. I asked. We don't know who it is, but it's only 2 years, and so you have to try to think of who had like a really big kit in the last 2 years. I don't know. Did Atlanta always has a bunch of bodies that buy things? So it was one of the questions. Maybe Atlanta, maybe it was Miami. I don't think it was Nashville. I like my Nashville peeps, but I don't think it was them. So it's weird to try to guess that, but we don't know the answer to that. The Galaxy sold over 2 times as many jerseys in the first 24 hours as they did in the first 30 days of the previous 3 kit launches. I don't know, Kevin, to me, that one says more about the quality of kits they launched more than just how successful this one was. Not only was it the right kit at the right time, but it was a good-looking kit at the right time. And so seeing the other ones in the last 3, I mean, there was a lot of argument over the last 3 kits that were announced about whether or not people liked it. I really don't see that much argument about this community kit. So it makes sense that this would outsell all of those, but it outsold them in the first 24 hours versus the first 30 days of the last 3. That's an incredible number.
You know why it's surprising to me is it's a great looking kit. You and I have talked about this, and you've tried to educate me on this whole thing, this whole phenomena. It's a great looking kit. But what I didn't understand is you can't go to a game. You may not be able to go to a game until the summer, if then. So the idea of getting that kit first, there's no deadline. You're like, you can't wear it to a game until August. So why did you have to have it in February?
One, and I told you this because MLS
I know you
is
did.
horrible. I'm actually surprised. After I sort of admonished you, and I said, this is why, and I explained it to you. I'm surprised you brought it up on the podcast because people are going to be. This is when people go,
I
I'm
know
turning
they're
it
gonna
off.
kill me.
Yeah,
They're gonna
it's
kill
just
me, yeah.
it's one is because MLS and the LA Galaxy are horrible at judging demand, right? And so you could think that Adidas is just going to keep printing jerseys and printing jerseys. They're not. All right, so I guarantee you at the
So there's a limited demand, limited
there
number
is.
of jerseys. Okay.
Now listen. That being said, this is going to be around for 2 years. This isn't a third kit problem that we had, with a lot of the, like some of the third kits only got printed for 1 year, right? Because those third kits were only 1 year sort of viable on that. So there are going to be 2 years of this jersey. That's something you can look at and say, okay, well they'll adjust for demand next year at the very least, and that's probably a good argument. But the bottom line is that everybody likes this kit so much that everybody wanted to be the first person to have it in their hands, taking pictures with it and wearing it. And because it's so linked to the 1997 jersey, it's something to do. It's something to be excited about. Sophie got it 100% right on Thursday night, which was the kit launch, and everything just sort of made things feel normal for a little while, and everybody going after it and everybody trying to get it and making sure that they got it, and all those things, that all mattered. And so yeah, there was a frenzy. It was a feeding frenzy. People saw other people getting it. People saw how excited they were. They wanted to get it. But after 2 years, this kit is never going to be produced again. And if you're any sort of, I think, Galaxy collecting fan, you're going to want at least one and maybe two and maybe 3 or 4 of these to hang in your closet, because as we've all seen, go try to find, a 1997 kit right now on eBay. You can't do it. Yeah, you can. That's not wrong. You can find them. But they're expensive, Kevin. They're worth $250 now, $300. So in many ways, they've doubled in price. I mean, certainly you look at these ones being almost $180 in some cases if you got them from the Team LA store. But they should hold their value. People know kit collectors got in on this one. I mean, people who aren't necessarily LA Galaxy fans got in on this one. So there was a lot of drive behind this, and I think it was something for people to do. And there is going to be limited quality. There may be a whole bunch of them produced. That way MLS and LA Galaxy can make a whole bunch of money in the next 2 years. But after those 2 years, it goes away. It's not coming back again. So that's sort of the idea behind all this. All right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it just feels, and you explained it, it feels like there's an artificial demand created. And that's probably a good marketing idea. But that if this thing sells out, and it did sell out,
yes,
Adidas is just going to say, forget it, no more. We're not making any more. They're going to make more.
They will.
They're going to make a lot more.
They'll make some more. They will never, trust me, they just don't, they did not understand. The Galaxy didn't understand. Adidas did not understand the hoopla, the demand behind this. Maybe they'll correct. Maybe they'll flood the market with these things. Maybe we'll be buying them at TJ Maxx in 2 years for $10, like we saw some of the Night Navy glitch kits being sold for $10. Authentic kits for $10 at TJ Maxx. But luckily, Galaxy fans ran in there and bought all of those.
You know what? From what I read on the Discord and hear from fans and stuff, just talking, I think what would really be a big seller is if they changed the jersey front sponsor. I mean, there seems to be a little bit of a pushback. For one thing, people don't seem to like the jersey front sponsor, but it's been there forever.
Yeah.
And to give it a real new look, if they changed, I don't know what they would change it to. That would. My wife and I were talking today about the Subway logo, the sandwich shop. That would be a good-looking logo in front of a shirt.
I think everybody.
Eat fresh.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think everybody is sort of in love with either a Tesla one or an In-N-Out one, something that's local to sort of Southern California.
In-N-Out would be a good-looking logo too.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. Again, I don't. As far as I'm concerned, $44 million from Herbalife still spends a lot. I don't love it. I don't love the connections. But at this point, I think if LA Galaxy fans are paying attention, the $44 million that you're getting, the $4.4 million a year, is a significant amount of money that you're able to put into the club and do those things. Let's get to... Yeah, go ahead.
I like the old Seattle Seahawks Xbox jersey front. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, the Sounders Xbox one?
Sounders.
Yes.
what did I say? Seattle Seahawks. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sounders.
same thing.
Whatever. The same stadium. It all gets mixed together.
Football.
No, I like the old Xbox one. I thought the Xbox one was kind of classic, and it was there for a lot of seasons. I like that one.
That was, I think that in overall terms of sponsors, that's not horrible. I think the honey, it's funny because the one thing that is still sort of hanging out over LA Galaxy and MLS right now is that the authentics that are being provided, Kevin, do not have, most of them don't have the honey logo patch on it. And then we have not seen an MLS badge on that kit yet. And that's an interesting thing. There are, usually if you buy an authentic, you get an MLS badge. If you are watching the video feed of this, you can see the MLS badge on the jersey that the Bear is wearing. There's an MLS badge. In fact, that jersey has two of them, one on each shoulder. There's supposed to be a honey logo on the right shoulder, and then on the left shoulder you should have the MLS badge. And as of right now, the MLS badges are not showing up on those. It's a weird thing to do. If you're going to call things authentic, Kevin, they need to look like the jerseys the players are wearing. Otherwise, otherwise you can't call it an authentic. So I think the LA Galaxy are going to have questions to answer about this, and it may not be their fault. And I think Adidas and MLS are going to have questions because in a lot of pictures, the MLS badge is missing from a lot of different teams' kits. So the MLS badge is an important sort of way to look at these and say, that's an authentic jersey, and you know it. I wouldn't be thrilled, I think, if the LA Galaxy and Team LA store sold those patches, and there is talk about Team LA store selling the honey patch, so that way you can get the logo on the sleeve and get that printed, and so that way your jersey looks just like the one the players are wearing. But I haven't seen anything about the MLS badges, and if MLS gets rid of the badges completely, that's one thing. But that doesn't seem to be the case, and so if there's a difference between the authentics, Kevin, and the team-worn or player-worn or game-worn jersey, there will be a revolt in Major League Soccer, and they will end up having to sell those patches, and then everybody will complain that they're selling something that everybody should have gotten included with their jersey. I know it's a small thing, but it's a thing.
The MLS patch and the badge is definitely going away because they're starting to sell the left sleeve now,
right?
With some teams. So that, and I don't know how they do that. I think they're allowing 8 teams to do that. So do the other 19 teams then have the MLS badge on their sleeves, and teams are allowed to sell advertising? Then they don't. I mean, I think there has to be something uniform about the uniform.
Yeah. Look at you
and see what I did there?
Your wordplay, Kevin Baxter. Very good. All right. Let's get a little bit to the LA Galaxy and the return to optional training. The LA Galaxy did have their first day of training. Or showing some B-roll of that if you're paying attention to any of our video stuff that we're doing. But the B-roll is there, and the LA Galaxy out to training. So they had their first day of training, Kevin. This is after everybody had their physicals over the weekend. They went already through their quarantine process. If they were able to do that, get through their quarantine process, get through their physicals, be medically cleared to be able to play, then as a player, you could go and jump into the group training today. And if you weren't cleared yet and you didn't have all of that, then you would have to go ahead and practice off to the side in sort of the individual session that was going on. But from what I have seen on the videos and sort of what we have seen of the different things in the team, and we don't know this for sure, Kevin, it looks like most of the guys showed up today for optional training.
Yeah, you talked about, you made a big point at the beginning in the lead-in about voluntary. The definition of voluntary means you don't have to do it, but this is a little bit more than voluntary. I think this is like the old, off-season training camps in the NFL where it wasn't mandatory, but it was mandatory. And if you didn't come, you got in trouble. This kind of feels a little bit like that. And that's fine. I think everybody that's on the field there wants to be there. I don't think anyone had a gun pointed at their head. A lot of these guys haven't played since early November. They wanted to be back. And so that's all fine. But the idea that it's voluntary for whatever reason, everybody was there. Most of these guys, I know Chicharito and Dos Santos and Sebastian Lletget, a lot of these guys have been working out for multiple weeks at the Dignity Health Sports Park. they, as you said, they passed their physicals. They've done the COVID testing. They had to have, I think, a week-long quarantine. So they've been around a while. This may have been called voluntary, but I think everybody was expected to be there. I think everybody was there. And I think anybody who wasn't better have a pretty good reason why they missed the voluntary workout. So was it really voluntary? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly something to that. And you're right.
On that B-roll, where are they training? It doesn't look like they're on the front fields anymore.
Yeah, I think they're still on the front fields. I think they are. They took a picture, I think it was yesterday or something like that, where it showed them taking pictures from the U.S. soccer fields, which is where they train out in front. I believe that's still correct. But yeah, I think they're.
Yeah, you see the trees, but there's another shot there that showed like buildings behind them, and I didn't recognize.
Yeah, it very well could. But yeah, I mean, you have these guys into optional training. You got some guys out there. I think Greg Vanney was talking about how he goes, I think most of these guys are like me. We just needed to get out on the field and get some energy out of the way. There's a lot of pent up stuff that sort of comes from the off season. So then after training today, basically we had a quick media call with everybody, so that way we could sort of get an idea. Greg Vanney, LA Galaxy head coach, was first. Jonathan Dos Santos spoke. Sebastian Lletget spoke. I think we'll talk mostly about what Greg Vanney was saying. He sort of started things, and I do have one excerpt from the media call that I want to play, but just to talk about it, he started things and basically said, the energy and excitement was great. He commented, Kevin, on how everybody came into the to the training camp. They were all in good shape, and he sort of said, the fact that these guys came in shape means I don't have to do a whole bunch of running with them in order to just get them in shape. They're already in shape. Now it's about playing soccer. He goes, so we went out on the field and we were working on stuff today. It's not like, hey, this is how we're going to play. This is how we're going to do things, blah, 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 the whole deal. But it was a little bit of, hey, let's get out there and start playing. Let's start working. This is day one. The LA Galaxy posted a video on their Instagram, and it's probably on Twitter as well, but they had Greg Vanney, Kevin, talking to the guys about they're in the TV studio where we always have our post-game press conferences, or I guess in normal times that's where we used to have our press conferences. And they had everybody in there. They had all the guys. They're all sitting in the rows where we normally sit, and you had Greg Vanney up top, and he goes, welcome back, and he sort of hinted, and he goes, well, I guess, actually, you guys should be saying welcome to us. We're the new guys here. And then he went over and he says, this is day one of, our work to setting a new standard in Major League Soccer. It's a really interesting speech because he talks about setting a new standard, Kevin, and he goes, we don't even know what that standard is, but we know when we get there, we'll know what it is. And we know that when we reach it, there's still more work to do. So it was, I don't know, you talk about being able to motivate guys. We talked about Guillermo Barros-Schelotto probably not being the best communicator with the guys. We've talked about how maybe his tactics and his organization was not the best. Here you have somebody like Greg Vanney who's sitting there saying, this is day one of the stuff, and a really interesting sort of things. We either do things that make us more successful on the field, or we do things that take away from making us more successful on the field. There's no neutral in between that. He basically says, he goes, there's no neutral in that. You're either doing stuff to make yourself better, or you're doing stuff that's going to make you worse. And we need to make sure we're doing stuff to make us better. I think that just in terms of how he's setting it up from day one, he seems to have a plan. And I don't know, speaking to Jonathan Dos Santos, speaking to Sebastian Lletget afterwards, they seem to be a fan of Greg Vanney very early on. Now, everybody's going to say they're a fan of the coach, in the first day of training whenever it's the new coach, Kevin. But at the same time, they could say a lot of things that aren't as enthusiastic as maybe they sound right now.
Well, I think the messenger is as important as the message. If Bruce Arenas says that, it resonates. If Greg Vanney says that, it resonates. Why? Because they've been there. They've done that. They've had success. The words just sound different. And this is no knock on anybody, but I think Kurt Onofo could have said the same thing. And people are looking to say, well, you need to prove yourself first. You need to show us that these, that your ideas work. Bruce Arena proved that. And Greg Vanney definitely has a big time honeymoon period where he can say a lot of things that may or may not make sense to players, but players are going to take him at his word, and they're going to do what he asks, and they're going to work hard for him because he comes in with that resume. He's a winner. He's won everywhere he's been as a player, as a coach. And so they're going to believe him. Yeah, it was a great speech, but it also carries the weight of of what he's accomplished as well.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's so interesting to hear everybody, sort of go about this. So Vanney came in. He, like you said, the guys came in fit and ready to go. Vanney was talking about how the team was going to play right away, and just sort of, he's trying to set up for the foundation of this. I think Damian asked him, hey, did you get into at all, how you're going to set up things, how you're going to play? And he's like, listen, it was the first day, mostly trying to get some energy out. But yeah, I mean, there were things we talked about when we were on the field about how the LA Galaxy want to play. And he goes, and so that was something that we sort of started with. And he goes, and we're going to lay the foundation tomorrow, basically coming in the next day. He says, we're going to lay that foundation. We're going to go out there. We're going to start to execute some of those plans. The LA Galaxy right now planning on training Monday through Thursday. Guys right now have Friday off. It doesn't show anything on the weekends, so I don't know if they're going to adjust the schedule for Saturday and Sunday as well. But as of right now, it's Monday through Thursday for voluntary training. And so you're going to see most of the guys training that. Now, that I already know of one person who's not there, and we can talk about that here in just a little bit, but a lot of different things that sort of went on with Greg Vanney. I don't want to finish up with him before we jump into any of that other stuff. It was interesting. He talked about Javier Hernandez and Jonathan Dos Santos, Kevin, being the veteran voices. And he says because, they put in a ton of work into the offseason. So, I think there's a respect level there, both from Vanney and from the other players, to sort of sit there and say, hey, Jonathan Dos Santos and Chicharito are sort of our leaders right now. These are the guys who are going to lead us. And he even talked about a little bit about their different sort of styles, which is Javi is sort of out there yelling at people during the play and doing things. And he goes, and Jonathan Dos Santos is usually busy, playing. And so whenever the whistle stops, that's whenever he goes over to guys and he sort of says, hey, this is how I want to do things. Let's do this. And so he goes, that's the kind of leadership that they're showing and that the guys are respecting. He talked about Sasha Kleshin as well. So, I mean, we talk about leadership as such a question, Kevin. It seems like Greg Vanney is trying to go ahead and cement that here rather early, saying that, Javier Hernandez and Jonathan Dos Santos seem to be those clubhouse voices.
Well, I got a bunch on that one. He when I talked to Vanney a couple weeks ago about Jonathan Dos Santos, and I said, he was your captain. Is he going to be the captain again? And he said, I haven't decided yet. Certainly he's a leader, but he wanted everyone to know that that's open. Right. You talk about Kleshin. He's definitely here. He was brought in to be a clubhouse leader. He was brought back to be a clubhouse leader. But interesting, Dennis DeClosa, when I talked to him about Villafana, Jorge Villafana, talked a lot about his leadership. And he said, one thing I wanted from Jorge is, he said, I looked at the Portland team last year, and they won the MLS's back tournament, and a number of things that they went through was a difficult season, and he was the guy that was the leader of that team. With all the veteran guys they had, it was Villafana was the guy that spoke up and held that team together. And he said that's a big reason why I went out to get him. So leadership is definitely a big thing. You talk about Chicharito. I'm going to predict a big year for Chicharito. I'm a big Chicharito guy. I had modest expectations last year, and he didn't come close to those. So I'm not going to tout him this year. But I will say, if anybody is going to benefit from Greg Vanney coming in, it's Chicharito. Why? Because he has a blank slate. Vanney did not see him at all last year. They never played. Toronto didn't play. It was the uneven schedule. He doesn't know he can look at the stats and just see Chicharito had a bad season, but he doesn't know anything about it. Chicharito starts all over again. That's the best thing you can have if you're a player like him and you say, look, I screwed up. I want to make it better. You got to have a guy that's not going to keep coming to you and saying, you're doing better than last year. This is what you did poorly last year. That last year doesn't exist for Greg Vanney. That is great for Chicharito. And the last thing I wanted to say, you talk about whether Vanney's working on things. We don't know what his style of play is going to be. We know how he played in Toronto, certainly. But there were a couple of interesting things that may give us a hint. One is Sebastian Lletget did say today that he feels like, in talking to Vanney and seeing him on the field, that he feels like he's going to play the same kind of position and he's going to have the same expectations he does for Greg Berhalter with the national team. And we know how they play it out of the back, push up front, both backs become wingers, both outside backs become wingers, the defensive midfielder and the center back stay back. That appears to be the kind of offense that he wants. A couple other tips for that. He wants to sign a defensive midfielder so that Jonathan Dos Santos can be box to box, contribute to the attack. That's another thing that Berhalter's offense does. And then finally, the last piece, again, Villafana. I don't know how much you know about him. I watched him a lot at Portland. He has a really great left-footed cross from that left wing. I think he's going to be a big part of the offense. Dennis can talk about the leadership skills all he wants, and I'm sure that that's valid. But he is an offensive left back, or has been, and can be. I think you're going to see a very aggressive offense from Greg Vanney. I think you're going to see the outside backs, Araujo and Villafania, pushing forward. And I think Sebastian Leget's right. I think he's going to play a much bigger part in the offense than he did last season, because it's that Berhalter type offense that Greg Vanney is bringing in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all sort of fits into itself. I wanted to get to one of Greg Vanney's quotes here, and we'll go ahead and play it for you. But this was my question to him, sort of asking about the rosters, and then we can sort of finish up on more of what Greg Vanney says. But before we go too far, I wanted to get Greg Vanney's response to my question, my follow-up here for the media call today. So here he is.
I think we are between 6 and 8 players left to continue to add to this group. Some of the younger players are getting a lot of experience with us and training, but we want them to play games. That won't always be with us, so some will continue to get their games at G2. And again, like I said, we still want to add to that veteran core that's kind of in their 20s, probably mid-20s, with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, so we can build some longevity with this group. And once we lay down the foundation, we have a group of guys that hopefully can be here for a while. And so obviously positionally and the qualities that we're looking for, we're being very specific. That's part of why this process is taking a little bit of time. It's not just any opportunity that shows up. We're looking for very specific qualities to fit into the group that we believe can help take us to the level that we need to be at. So all of those targets are there. We're making progress with all of them, and it's just like I said, it's getting over the final hurdles and getting guys signed and here and into training so that they can start integrating together as a group.
Yeah, Greg, can I follow just on the difficulties during COVID?
Sure.
How much has that sort of changed the way you guys are doing scouting or sort of trying to evaluate talent of players who aren't here in the United States that you can't go and see?
It slows the process a little bit because, as we have a lot of the dollars that we have to spend are in the TAM category. I mean, these are not insignificant spaces that we're talking about filling. And so we want to do diligence. It's not an easy time to do diligence because that includes trying to meet with the player face to face, ideally seeing them play live. It includes a number of things that aren't so easy in the moment. We've been able to do that with just about everybody that we've been speaking with, but it has taken a little bit of time, and that's part of it. But we're talking about adding players that can be with us for 3 to 5 to 7 years. So we've got to take that process wisely, and we've got to try to minimize any sort of mistakes by just due diligence and checking off all the boxes.
All right, there you go. Greg Vanney talking at the media conference call today, Kevin. So a lot of things to sort of pull from that. And for me, if you're an LA Galaxy fan, I think this is the most exciting sort of stuff that Greg Vanney can tell you. He says basically the roster is 6 to 8 players from completion. Says he talked earlier in saying all signings are sort of on the edge and everything is sort of there for them. So you can expect that once those fall into place, that Vanney will get his 6 to 8 players. Here's the interesting thing about 6 to 8 players, with 25 signed currently to the senior team roster. The 8 would put them 3 players over the 30. So you can expect that some of the guys who are on the fringe, maybe Dunbars or the Furcranis or some of the younger guys who have been promoted up from Galaxy 2 to that senior team. Vanney even talked about it. You might expect them that they're going to spend most of their minutes down with Galaxy 2, and that's how you're going to be roster compliant with all those. So a lot of things to sort of go in there. But again, Kevin, talking about signings for 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 years, guys who are really going to make, sort of a difference on this. And having said that, it's coming to the point where they don't want to make the same mistakes that they have in the past. And so to me, this seems like a cautious approach, but with COVID in the way, everything is a lot slower.
Well, it brings up a couple issues. First of all, it tips that Greg's hand a little bit that this is a longer rebuilding project. Now, I don't want to say a rebuilding project or reboot. Greg Vanney is obviously going to try to win. You heard Jonathan Dos Santos talk today about how he thought they were going to have a great season. So it's not the Chicago Cubs or Houston Astros go back and tear everything down, start over again. It's rebuilding while trying to accomplish accomplish something. But Greg Vanney clearly seems to think that this is a multi-year project, and I think he's asking the Galaxy to be patient, that there's going to be some rough patches until he gets this right. That's important because when Dennis and Guillermo came in, they said 3 years. They said it would be a third year. We're going to be, everything is going to be great. They never made it to that third year. I think Greg probably looked at that and said, and he has the experience in Toronto. He says he likes projects. He came into Toronto. They had never made the playoffs. It took them a couple of years to get going. And then they did, won MLS Cup. So I think Greg knows what it takes to do this. He's asking for this to be a multi-year project. He's asking for them to go get the players that will be here throughout that. The last thing you want to do is get a big piece for this puzzle that you're building and then have that piece lead before the rest of the puzzle arrives. So that's all very smart. The thing about the 6 to 8 players coming in, though, they were on the field today. They were doing things. They were working out. They were working on some things. Those 6 to 8 players are going to miss that. And I know that you talk about they'll have time to catch up, the 6 weeks for opening day and all that. But every day that goes by that they miss some of this instruction, some of this teaching, they're going to be a little bit behind. And I think it's going to be tough to catch up because we know this condensed schedule. Once the season starts, there's no time for training sessions where you actually implement strategy. It's pretty much play, recover, train, put in a new game plan, and move on. And there's not going to be a lot of time to instruct players on the way he wants to play.
Yeah, I get that. I will say that in general, MLS seems to be taking, for the most part, a cautious approach to this season. So it's not something that I'm sitting there saying, oh, well, the LA Galaxy are doing anything different than anybody else. I will say that, so far the moves that the LA Galaxy have made, and I think, Vanney sort of talked about it a little bit too. He says, listen, I got a lot of young players and I got a lot of older players. I need those guys in the middle. And he talked about the TAM signing. A lot of the dollars that they have to spend are the targeted allocation money signings. Those are big signings. And so I think that they have time to get that done. You're right. You're missing days. But at the same time, I think everybody's trying to do this correctly and not be, in the rush. The one thing that you can certainly say is that with the season getting delayed and things getting pushed back, it feels like the Galaxy have had more time to get their ducks in a row, and so shouldn't necessarily be scrambling to get these. And I think scrambling is probably the wrong word too, Kevin. They're not scrambling. They're just it just takes longer. It takes longer to talk to guys. It takes longer to scout people. It takes right now just a lot of work in order to be able to do all of these things, and that's what's slowing everything down. So the added time is necessary, and I would look at it and say, I think the criticism is, well, other teams are getting it done. Yes, they are. And I think that the LA Galaxy are also getting it done. You're just not seeing a lot of it. And we do have one signing we can tell you about coming up here in a little bit that looks like is going to get over the line here pretty rapidly. So,
well, but they're being very methodical, and that's good because you can understand the temptation. We're looking at guys. This is the guy we really want. He's going to take another couple of weeks if we can get him. This is the guy. He can come now. He's almost as good. We really want that guy. That's what you want Dennis and Greg to be doing, and that's what they're doing. They're saying, no, we want the guy we want. We don't want to take the guy that's available. We want the guy we want. And as far as what you said about there's the really talented guys and there's the really young guys. It's those guys in the middle, and that's why MLS created allocation money. This is true in every sport. You have your superstars and you have your young minimum wage players. You don't expect a lot from the minimum wage players. They're going to take up some playing time. You just hope they don't make too many mistakes. You don't expect them to be the game changers. Then you have your superstars. Those guys, they carry the load. Those are the guys that are supposed to win games. But it's those guys in the middle that make the difference. If you have a superstar forward who's scoring 6 goals a game, but your midfield is terrible and you're giving up 7 goals, you're going to lose. It's those guys in the middle who aren't the designated players, but aren't the young guys. And Greg's right about that. Those are the guys that are going to those are the guys who are going to win or lose championships. And you look back at those Bruce Arena years and look at those guys that, Robbie Keane and David Beckham and Landon Donovan didn't win those championships. Juninho, Marcelo Sarvis, and Todd Donovan, AJ De La Garza, those were the guys that won the championships.
Oh, well, I think they all won them. I think everybody got a ring, right?
They all help. Yeah. Well, did you get a ring?
I didn't. I did not. I'll wait. I'll wait in the mail. I'll go there looking for my Ted Lasso jersey as well.
I'm checking that bear's paw.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see about that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, that was Vanney sort of talking. The one thing that I want to point out here is that Greg Vanney, John Rojas did a good job and asked Greg Vanney about the allegations against Christian Pavone. Sort of asked for that, and Vanney sort of said the same thing that we've seen, Kevin, which is that the deal is there. If Boca want to make the deal, then they can do it. He says, it's been sitting there for about 1 or 2 weeks. It's the same stuff that we've been reporting about that, so it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody who's been following around the podcast or anything like that. But Christian Pavone said, what are your thoughts on the allegations of the sexual assault allegations? What do you think about those? And Greg Vanney said, I don't know Christian personally. This is paraphrasing, but he says, I don't know Christian personally. He goes, and I don't really know all the facts of the case in order to do that. He goes, so, I don't really have an opinion on that. And to me, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't make sense. If you're the head coach, then you have an opinion on Christian Pavone and whether or not you think he should be part of your team or not. And maybe that's an unfair criticism because he doesn't know him. But for me, if you're willing to put this guy on your team, and certainly I understand Dennis DeClosa is the general manager and he's going to make signings, but if Greg Vanney stood up and said, no, I don't want this guy on my team, then I have to imagine Dennis DeClosa would look elsewhere, Kevin. So I'm not currently buying I don't have an opinion on the sexual assault allegations against Christian Pavone. Is that fair or unfair?
Yeah, no, I when I read that quote, I felt the same way. It was I felt two things. First of all, I felt it was a little bit of a cop-out. Clearly, he knows more than he's letting on. He knows a lot more than he's letting on, even if it's hearsay, even if it's something that Dennis and others have told him, because that was his question. Hey, Dennis, is this guy a good guy? What do you believe about the allegations? So, yeah, he clearly knows more. So that's one part of it. The second part is, how else could he answer that? If he says it's all untrue, the woman's making it up, this is all fabricated, and then there's a smoking gun that comes out,
right?
Then Vanney's toast.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if Vanney says the guy's a horrible human being, he probably did it, he should go to prison for life, and then Pavone winds up, because Chris Klein and Dan Beckerman and Dennis DeClosa want him there, and he winds up on the roster, Greg Vanney can't manage him.
Right.
So yes, it was a little bit of a cop-out. I don't think it was completely honest, but I don't see how he could have answered any other way, unless you want, Martin Luther King to be, some guy that's all character and nothing else. Yes, you want character from your head coach. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that real politics tells you that's kind of how he had to answer it today. He may have a different answer tomorrow or next week.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a little bit. I thought the other thing is Jonathan Dos Santos showed us his muscles in the he was asked how he was feeling and how he's physically feeling. He goes, I feel great, and he gave us the muscles. I won't do the impression because my muscles are bigger than Jonathan's. I don't want to scare him away. But Jonathan Dos Santos gave us little muscles. But the best part about that, at least in my opinion, and certainly this comes as somebody who's a non-Spanish speaker, is Jonathan Dos Santos answering questions in English and doing a very fine job, much better than my Spanish will ever be. He did it with a smile on his face, as is normally the case with Jonathan Dos Santos. But that's just fun to have him and see him progress through all this and to be able to. And Kevin, I know in your article you talked about Jonathan Dos Santos learning English because he wants to be able to talk to his teammates. But it helps that he can talk to the press as well, and it helps that he can talk to fans who don't speak Spanish as well or do speak Spanish. Being bilingual for him is such an important thing, and I think it shows. It shows sort of how dedicated he is to the LA Galaxy and wanting to be at the LA Galaxy. And the second thing is he talked about it being his contract year again, and it was a focal point of his discussions. He said it from his mouth, just as you reported that he said from his own mouth, Kevin. So he's focused on this year. He seems ready to go.
He said a lot of things that interview. He said he was going to try to do English. He didn't do it with me. I do speak Spanish, so that helped a little bit in making him maybe more comfortable in doing it in Spanish. But he told me when he came here, he had 2 weeks of formal English lessons and then said, no, this is not working. This is not the way I want to learn. He learned by watching TV with subtitles and just talking to people. He'd go to the supermarket. He'd go out with friends. He'd go to talk to his teammates. And he was trying to soak up as much as he could. And I know from learning Spanish, the TV thing with the subtitles is really great, especially the news. You watch the news, there's news footage. They're talking about fire trucks going to a fire, and they call them bomberos. Well, you figure out bomberos are firefighters. It's
right.
It's pretty simple. But Jonathan deserves a lot of credit. He didn't have to do this. He's a Mexican national team star. He's in Southern California. There's 6 million Mexican Americans in Southern California. He could speak Spanish all day long. He doesn't need to learn that. He could go back to Mexico and be a hero. He told me he's bought a house and he wants to retire here. This is where he wants to live when his career is over. I believe him right now. This is where he wants to be. So he's going to learn English. It's for him. It's for the team. It's just all good. And it's really nice to see a guy who's clearly not a mercenary. He's not here to pick up a paycheck and go home.
Right. No, it certainly is. And again, I think my pleasure with all this or my enjoyment of it comes from the fact that with Jonathan, we've seen him speak English to everybody before, and he just never felt comfortable doing it in the press conference. And I was texting one of the Galaxy PR people while it was going on. I go, is Jonathan going to do questions in English? And they're like, yeah, he's going to, a few at the end. I'm like, okay, cool, this is great. And he did it, and he smiled. And it's just, I don't know. It's a good moment, just having followed Jonathan and talked to him for so many years since he joined the LA Galaxy in 2017, and to see that. And it's fun. It's fun for me, and I'm sure some other reporters. I know Damian Calhoun was covering, was laughing too, just in sort of big smiles. Big smile on Jonathan's face, big smile on the people who were sort of watching him, and he did a great job, and he'll continue to do that. But I think, again, it shows some dedication to where he wants to be and how he wants to do things, Kevin, and that's an interesting sort of look. And he talked about knowing that they have to do things differently this year and they have to be better, and that he wants to win with the LA Galaxy, not only because the team deserves it, but because the fans deserve it. And, it seems that he's taking that to heart right now.
Well, and let's just go down this road a little bit further. A lot of people that are bilingual in Southern California, and there's a ton of them, they're probably looking at this and say, what's the big deal? Well, those people grew up in a Spanish-speaking household and a English-speaking society. Both languages come natural to them. Jonathan grew up in Mexico, played his whole career in Spain, has never lived in a country where Spanish wasn't the dominant, primary language. And he's come here, and he's a professional with a reputation, making a lot of money. One screw up that you or I could laugh at, and some reporter in the back decides they're going to go to town on Jonathan.
Right.
It could embarrass him. It could, the downside to this is huge. You and I get the upside, and Damian does, and the other guys that are there every day. And I don't think there's anybody with a mean bone that's going to burn Jonathan if he makes a mistake. If anything, we'll clean it up for him. And that's not something that, reporters do that.
Yes.
If we're speaking to the guy in his second language, he gets a little bit extra. And that's the same with Iranian players or whomever. But that doesn't mean every reporter does that. There are people that are out there to embarrass the players. And so the downside to this for Jonathan is so huge. And I've seen it with other athletes, especially Japanese athletes in baseball. A guy like Hideki Matsui, Ichiro, to the end of his career, never let on that he spoke perfect English. He speaks Spanish too. He would do all his interviews in Japanese with a translator. Hideki Matsui would talk to you all day long about what he had for dinner, where he went, what movies he likes, his favorite rock artist. But if you wanted to ask him a baseball question, he'd bring a translator over. He wasn't going to take a chance of an on-the-record interview embarrassing him. Jonathan's decided to blow past all that. I think it says something. I don't want to get too big on this, but I think it says something a little bit about his trust for us as well, which is a nice compliment. But also the fact that all the credit goes to Jonathan. He's applying himself. He's taking the risk. He's trying to be a good teammate. He's trying to be a good employee of the Galaxy. Right now, it's a win-win, and I don't think he has to worry about embarrassing himself either. I think his English is really, really good, and his Spanish is okay too.
Yeah, that's what I heard. No, he's been doing great. So again, fun to sort of see the thing. The only guy who I kind of expected to be at the opening day call was Javier Chicharito Hernandez. I will imagine that they're probably going to tee him up here in the first couple of weeks, though. So I wouldn't read too much into that. They have their guys. They picked them. They got them in. I think you're going to see a little switch up of some different guys who come in for week 2 for the media conference calls, that type of thing. So just sort of keep an eye on that. Again, Galaxy training Monday through Thursday this week. Team off on Friday. Doesn't say anything about Saturday or Sunday right now. If they update that, we'll let you know. Let's see. I got 2 sort of breaking news items that we were able to sort of provide for you today. I won't certainly take credit for this one because it was on a schedule. I just asked about it. But we got a little sneak peek at least one of the games the LA Galaxy will be at playing this preseason schedule that they have going on. March 20th, the LA Galaxy, that is the senior team, LA Galaxy, not the USL team. Just want to make sure it's not LA Galaxy 2. This is the senior team. Looks like they'll be playing against San Diego Loyal, Landon Donovan's team that he coaches down in the USL. So that's on March 20th. The LA Galaxy will do that. I got that confirmed by the LA Galaxy. I'm not sure where it's going to be. I don't know what time it is. So none of the details are sort of there yet, but on 3/20, the LA Galaxy will play the San Diego Loyal, and as of right now, the Loyals say that there are no plans to broadcast that or stream that game. So sort of
they should play at Camp Pendleton, right in between neutral turf.
Yeah, you could do that.
Field. Yeah,
if it's going to be closed door, all you need is a soccer field, right? I mean, you don't need anything major for that.
Beach soccer.
That's the perfect. That works too. So anyway, so that is something that is coming up, so you can keep an eye out for that. Let's get a little bit deeper into some LA Galaxy news, and I think I've done a pretty good job of teasing this signing all the way through now. The LA Galaxy, and COG has learned this, and it was something we reported today. The LA Galaxy are on the cusp of signing 28-year-old German-American Derek Williams, who is a center back / left back, currently playing for Blackburn Rovers, also currently injured. And so it is my understanding that he is in the United States, that he was at least going through physicals and stuff with the LA Galaxy as they were going through that, and that they basically are just waiting on the day to announce him and sort of bring him in. So for those of you who said they were going to sign another center back, you were right and I was wrong. So you get that one. I don't know if that's a huge thing. But when you look at this player, Kevin, a guy who was playing in the English Championship, a guy who has a background at Aston Villa and Bristol City, I think, down in League One, and then up with Blackburn Rovers in the Championship. He has a bunch of games under his belt. He is I said German American. Let's see. His father is American. His mom is Irish. He was born on a base, I think, in Germany, grew up in Ireland.
Hamburg, I think.
Yeah.
Hamburg or Hanover. With an H.
Yeah, I think you're right, Hamburg. And grew up in Ireland, is eligible to play and does play for the Irish national team because of his mother.
3 caps.
Yep.
3 caps.
3 caps, the latest in November of 2019. And so, and he has, we imagine he has an American passport as well, which means that he will not take up an international slot. So, the LA Galaxy now, this is twice. You had Jonathan Bond, Kevin, who has sort of the dual nationality, is able to come in and not play for an international slot. It looks like Derek Williams is going to be the same way. Somebody, and Dennis had hinted at this, I think a couple times whenever I've at least talked to him, is that they have a list of these guys, and they were sort of keeping an eye on these guys, and the guys with dual nationality, the guys who can come in and play in Major League Soccer without taking up an international slot. They had a list of these guys, and they're going out and they're scouting them and they're signing them. So it shows a strategy, because as of right now, I think I have the LA Galaxy at basically 3 of 8 international slots being taken up.
Well, I want to give Dennis credit for that, because his work with the Mexican national team, as a youth development guy, one of his things was to look at dual nationals, especially in the U.S., guys who could compete for Mexico that were overseas, and again, especially in the U.S., but in other countries as well. There is a certain formula, there's a certain way you do this, and I think I don't want to give Dennis too much credit, because if he was really that good at it, why didn't he do it the last 2 years when Guillermo was here? Maybe Guillermo had a different sort of profile he was looking at, but certainly Dennis knows how to do this, and I think he's been very successful. I think they should introduce this guy on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. I think that would be the perfect time to introduce him. But another thing that you didn't mention is his contract runs out June 1st.
Right.
The fact that he's played 250 games between League One, the Championship, which is the second tier in England, and he has 1 cap in the Premier League with Aston Villa. His contract runs out June 1st. He's probably not going to play for Blackburn because of the injury and stuff. He could, by the time he maybe gets healthy, April, May, their season's pretty much over. Getting him off the books helps them. I think he's probably going to wind up coming as a free transfer, which is yet another good thing the Galaxy did. They got a dual national, a guy with experience playing in some of England's biggest leagues, and he's going to be free.
Yeah,
and he's 28.
Yeah, and he's 28. He's got. Now, I mean, we're assuming right now, we're guessing on the transfer if there's a transfer fee. If there is one, I would imagine it's not very high. So that's something else to sort of look at. But the other thing is that he's coming in and he's injured. He picked up a quad injury playing with the Rovers there. Sort of came, was off, I think, for about 6 weeks from what I can tell, and then had to come back because the Blackburn was having some problems with injuries, and so they needed him if he was available. And so, according to sort of reports, they allowed him to come back if he wanted to. He said he wanted to, and then he ended up hurting the quad injury even worse. Ended up having to have surgery, apparently to attach the muscle back to the bone. In some cases, it's not a great injury, but at the same time, they expected, I think, him to be out 2 to 3 months. You're looking at a guy who should be relatively good to go, at least back into training, probably in the next 4 weeks or so. That's at least the expectation right now. We're expecting the LA Galaxy to make this announcement. Basically, it could be any day now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it even falls into next week. Everything's been taking, I think, a little bit longer. So just sort of keep your eyes out there and sort of be ready for that announcement. But at least where you heard it first here on Corner of the Galaxy, that the LA Galaxy will be signing this player. So barring any last minute unforeseen things. Yes, Kevin.
I have some news.
Yes, go for it.
People have been asking about Dominic Kinnear. I found out Dominic Kinnear is not going to have a role with the Galaxy. He is under contract, as all the other coaches that were fired last year were also under contract, get paid one more year. I don't know what Dominic's contract terms are. I expected, the Galaxy have had this habit, like when Dan Kennedy was retired. He had a contract. He could have walked away. He could have done anything. Galaxy had to pay him. They carved out a front office spot for him, and he was able to transition into a very good TV career there for a little while. I thought Dominic would do something. I thought, he's kind of a soccer gym rat. A guy can't be away from the game. I thought maybe he would do scouting, maybe work in the academy. That may come. But right now, as I understand it, he's at home, away from the team. He does not have a role with the team and is collecting a paycheck. He probably has, as Kurt Onofo did, probably has a non-compete clause, which means that if he signs to do similar work with another team, that the Galaxy stopped paying him. So it behooves Dom to continue to take a paycheck without working, because once he signs up, then he loses that money. But that's where he is right now. He's at home, probably watching soccer tapes on TV, probably scouting people, but he's not getting paid for it.
In a way, I'm not surprised. I think I said one of those things. You always thought that he would stay, and I was always like, I'd stay home and collect the paycheck. Maybe that's me. And I understand why you said that as well. You're not wrong in terms of Dominic Kinnear and wanting to work and always sort of putting the time in. But it's sad to see Dominic Kinnear no longer with the LA Galaxy. I can't hang any of this on Dominic Kinnear from what I can see. And he did everything the LA Galaxy asked him to do over and over again. So a really good sort of soldier for the Galaxy through Siggy and through the Guillermo Barros-Schelotto, coaching tenures there.
Well, he had a role with Guillermo. He was the English translator. He was also the MLS whisperer, because Guillermo and his staff didn't know much about MLS. Dominic's third winningest coach in MLS history. He'll retire now, tied with Bob Bradley for the third winningest coach in regular season MLS history. He had a role with Guillermo. He doesn't have that role with Greg Vanney. I think it would have been a little bit more uncomfortable. I think, Dom would have had to walk softly because they didn't want to intimidate Greg and make it look like he was going for Greg's job. I think Greg would have had to be careful not to insult Dom, not to respect him. It just would have been a bad situation. I think there would have been a lot of things that weren't said that were assumed by people outside, and it probably wouldn't have worked. Now, if he had gone to the Academy or Galaxy 2, that's a little bit below his pay grade, but certainly he could have been a great teacher with some of the young kids at Galaxy 2. Probably didn't do that. So, yeah, it's great for Dom. He was beyond a great soldier. He did everything they asked, as you said, and did it very well. Twice an interim coach without getting the job on the back end. He didn't fit in with the kind of staff that Greg wants to put together. He's a young guy. He's in his mid-50s. He's going to wind up somewhere. Yeah. You haven't heard the last of him. He's going to add to that win total for sure.
It certainly seems that way. And I'm sure he'll make a good head coach for somebody who is looking for that down the road. And again,
Sacramento.
Yeah, if they ever make it to Major League Soccer, certainly could be. So yeah, there's Dominic Kinnear. Let's finish up our last a little bit of news, and it has to do with the U.S. Men's national team and their Olympic qualifying bid. Remember, it's a 23 and under roster. Greg Berhalter, but it's not. Jason Christ put out his 31-man roster. Why is it 31? That's stupid. Why? Like, what? Who came up with that number? Why? It could be 30. It could be 32. But why 31? I don't really care. I didn't.
Well, it's going to be 20. It's going to be 20 when they start the tournament.
Isn't that nuts that a full Olympic roster is 20 players? That's not that many players.
You know what it is for women? 18, and 2 of them have to be goalkeepers.
Good Lord. That's a lot. Okay, anyway. So eventually paring down to the 20-man roster. Julian Araujo made this list, the 31-man roster. So did Jonathan Klinsmann. So both of those players are down in Guadalajara with the U23 U.S. men's national team Olympic qualifying group here. And so you should not expect to see them in any of the training videos that we have. They're in Guadalajara. They're doing their thing. That tournament itself actually starts in the middle of March, so March 18th. And before all of that happens, as Kevin says, it has to come down to 20 players. So we'll see if Araujo and Klinsmann make the final cut there. But they're at least in the finalist section of this as Jason Christ gets ready for this tournament.
You know who's not there? Efrain Alvarez.
Yeah, I was going to say that is the one, and that was the question mark, right? That was Efrain Alvarez called both into Mexico's camp and the United States' camp. Araujo choosing to go to Mexico. I mean, with his inclusion or his exclusion from the U.S. men's national team list there, and Greg Berhalter saying, Efrain's a player that we're working with and talking with about making, as we said from the very, very beginning, a very difficult personal decision. He decided not to make that decision yet, and not making that decision means that he stays with Mexico because he is cap tied right now to Mexico in terms of his nationalities, and he can make a one-time switch, Kevin. But if he makes a one-time switch, he has no options left. He would be with the United States then from there on out. So the smart move for him is to not make that decision yet and stay with Mexico, because when you're with Mexico, you have the choice of going to Mexico or the United States. If you go and change to the United States, you can't go back to Mexico. You've made your decision. So he needs to see how this plays out.
Well, and he's cap tied because he played in a FIFA championship tournament. It was an age group tournament. I think it was the U17 World Cup, but that counted to cap tie him. Usually most players have to play in a senior competitive game to be cap tied. But when you look at the two rosters, yes, Julian Araujo as a right back is competing against, for the main national team now, would be competing against guys like Serginho Dest and DeAndre. He comes back. There's certainly competition there. But when you look at the players, the young players that Efrain Alvarez would be competing against on the senior national team, it is, we're talking about Weston McKennie at Juventus. We're talking about, depending on where he gets played, maybe he winds up competing with Christian Pulisic, with Sebastian Lletget. There's Josh Sargent. Then you got Matthew Hopp. And it's just an incredible list. Gio Reyna, all these attackers that the U.S. has that are all right in that age range around where Efrain is. He could be looking at 15 years of trying to get some playing time with that national team. Conversely, look at Mexico. Yes, they're a great team. They're ranked in the top 10 right now, but that team is a veteran team. Very few young players coming up. There's one or two. Certainly not the depth of talent, young talent that the U.S. has. So that's another thing I think Efrain is probably looking at is, where do I fit in best? Where can I get more playing time? Where can I influence them? Sure, the U.S. may wind up at some point being a better team than Mexico. Mexico is the better team right now. But, if Efrain's watching the team play from the sidelines, it doesn't really matter how good they are if he's not getting to play. So, yeah, I think he's being very smart. And I think you're right. I don't think we've heard the last of this yet. I think there's be some more negotiations going on going forward. One thing that's interesting about this World Cup qualifying tournament is you play with this U23 team, and a lot of the guys like Serginho Dest, like Weston McKennie, like Gio Reyna, they're not released from the European teams. They can't play in the qualifiers. So this team will qualify, and then the team that goes to the Olympics, if there is an Olympics in July, may be a completely different team. And the team that the U.S. could put on the field, if you just look at their under 23 guys, it could be an amazing team.
Yeah.
Those guys, it's weird. It's the U.S. has to qualify with another team, and then they get to bring the A team to Japan.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and certainly a lot of MLS stuff going on. I think Atlanta didn't allow their 3 players that were called into this camp to be released, basically keeping them for the CCL, the CONCACAF Champions League that they're trying to prepare for under a new coach, and a whole bunch of things. In my opinion, a very short-sighted, short view of things, but they've made their bed, and that's what it is. The LA Galaxy didn't have to release Klinsmann and didn't have to release Araujo for this, so keep that in mind with these Olympic qualifiers and sort of how that goes. But we'll be watching to see basically how Julian Araujo does and Efrain Alvarez, and then of course Jonathan Klinsmann. So keep an eye on those guys. If they're missing from any of the stuff, that is why they're missing, because they are down with the U23s getting ready for this tournament in Guadalajara. So they'll be ready to rock and roll here in Mexico in the middle of March. So it's going to be an interesting time for all of that. So that's I think that's it, Kevin. I think we covered a whole bunch of stuff, which is nice because we actually had news to talk about. I would imagine that there is more stuff as the week goes on. You heard Greg Vanney talking about having some signings lined up, 6 to 8 players. He didn't say that name for, just out of the blue. As a matter of fact, we said at one point, Kevin, I think 5 to 9 players the LA Galaxy were ready to sort of bring in, and, that would happen. It seems like it's just taking longer than I think everybody expected it to do. I think Greg Vanney sort of explained that again today. So, if you're waiting for signings, they're there. They should be coming, relatively in a short period of time. But in the next month is probably a relatively short period of time to get all of those signings across the line. But it feels like they've sort of got them lined up.
I've got some homework for you that you can do in the next week, and you can cheat off someone else's paper, and it's open book, and just bring your results back next week. You talked about 31 players have to be cut down to 20 on the men's side. You look at the women's national team, they have to cut it down to 18, 16 outfield players. I want you to pick a roster. Who do you leave out? Which forward do you not take? Do you not take Tobin Heath? Do you not take Lynn Williams? Do you leave Alex Morgan home because she's now 32? How do you put that team together? And then with your leftover players, you can make up a B team that will win the silver medal.
Yeah.
And Tokyo.
Well, and the fun and the interesting thing about that is certainly on the women's side, it's not a U23 tournament. It's a full team tournament. It's not limited. So it's a totally different set of rules. And the Olympics did that on the men's side, I think, to protect the World Cup, but the women have a World Cup as well. So, eventually are we going to see Olympic qualifying come back to where, it almost feels like it's like the dream team where it used to just be, amateur athletes and the professionals couldn't play it. And now you go and look at what the Team USA does in basketball and things like that. It's professional athletes and it's the best players in the world. And they do that because it's a spectacle. Eventually, do they do that on the men's side again? Because it's certainly paid off for the women's side. I think the women's tournament is so much fun to watch.
There is no other tournaments. The World Cup and this, they don't, they're having a European Championship now. It's not to this level. Besides, the best team is the U.S. There's great teams in South America. They don't play in that tournament. Yeah, so this is the second best tournament. It's just that much behind the World Cup, and the European powers will all be there for the first time. They didn't used to take this seriously. They didn't take the World Cup seriously, the European women's teams. They are the Olympics, rather. They are taking it seriously now. It will be a great tournament. So we will look forward to seeing your 18-woman, 16 outfield player team next week.
All right, very good. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, it's at KBaxter11, and head on over to LATimes.com. Kevin's had a lot of stuff in the paper about the LA Galaxy, Villafana, Jonathan Dos Santos, Chicharito. Julian Araujo has been in there as well. So you're missing out if you're not over at the LA Times getting those articles, and subscribe to his newsletter as well. All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's where you can find all of our articles, all of our breaking news, our podcasts, our videos, all that stuff, cornerofthegalaxy.com. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman, and you've been watching and listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.